Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. There, I've hit the button. So this is completely unedited. I'm not going to edit this, Chris, so don't screw it up, okay?
Oh, great. Thanks. No pressure.
Yeah, because we don't have time for editing if we're going to we're going to help keep people, keep their minds off all the crap that's going on right now.
Well, I think in these days, especially with this podcast, it's about quantity over quality. Yeah. Of course, I don't know if that's different from usual, but whatever.
This is off to a rousing start. I'm turning my camera off because I don't want to look at you.
All right. Yeah, I'll do the same.
All right. So we were just having a great conversation about the Hug It Out episode was actually quite popular.
It was. It really was. And it came at a perfect time, I think.
Yeah. And everybody responded within, I'm not particularly, as you can attest, we only set this up 5 minutes ago.
Was it that long?
Yeah, exactly. Because we were conversing back and forth about how the podcast might be helping some people. So then I said, well, what are you doing right now? And you said, working on the layout. And I said, go get your headset and we'll do something right now.
Well, I'm just glad I had an appropriate response to that question.
Yeah, I don't need that much information.
Yep, just ripping up tape. I've been working on the layout, doing some scenery, and got anxious about seeing how things looked without all this blue tape covering the tracks. So I've been pulling that up.
And how's the scenery going? Because I know you were very anxious about you had much angst about doing scenery.
I did and still do. I mean, it is a slow go. And one thing that is a nice consolation is that it does seem, at least in that one corner that I've shown all the pictures of, it does seem that for all the angst and the time, at least it comes out looking the way I want it to. But boy, does it take me a long time. And, just obsessing over stuff. I mean, simple stuff. I'm still trying to dial in a good glue water ratio for adhesive. But it's going along. And one of the lessons that I keep having to learn over and over again is, it's like golf. You don't have to be good at it to enjoy it, and just keep going at it. And there's nothing, and you've said this before too, and it's absolutely true. There's nothing that can't be done over again. And the time that you'll waste obsessing over it, you could have redone it 3 times. So, redoing doesn't waste time. Obsessing does. But, have I really figured that out and taken that to heart? Not really. It sounds good, though.
Yeah, it sounds good. But there's not much about scenery that you can screw up. I mean, you can screw it up and have to do it over again, but it's not like blowing out a decoder or messing up a paint job on a locomotive or something like that, because there is no hard and fast rule. I mean, you want to try to make it look as realistic as you can, but I found as time went along, the less I did, the better it got. Like, I got down to a point, like, my basic scenery strategy was, because it was West Virginia, I made these, at first I started out with, okay, now this will be good. This will be a good, I called it lichen. Do you call it lichen?
Lichen, love it.
Do you call it lichen?
I do.
Yeah.
That's okay. I always called it aethern.
Well, there you go. Okay, is it Cato or Cato?
Oh, God, we're going to go down that road. Yeah. Cato. I think it's Cato.
I think it's Cato too. And yet Tony Cooks says Cato. And he says the guy that owns the place calls it Cato. But then I said, well, why wouldn't you tell him he's pronouncing it wrong?
Yes. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. Listen. Yeah. So I started out with lichen or lichen, whichever you want. That's going back a million years ago. And then somebody discovered polyfiber.
Oh, okay.
And I started doing polyfiber. And I would make because I needed hillsides covered with trees. And one of the times I was driving to Florida, I realized often the distance, and it doesn't have to be that much distance. You look at any book about the Chesapeake and Ohio through Thurmond or anything like that. Trees don't really look definition. There's not much definition to them on a hillside.
Right.
So at first I started out with this white polyfiber, and I would spray it. I would make it into a ball, and then I would spray it black, and then I'd cover it with ground foam and blah, blah, blah. And then I started to realize, you know what, I could just spread this out over a hillside and, make it clumpy and then spray it black and then cover it with ground foam.
Do a whole hillside at once.
Yeah. And then, oh my God, one day, I don't remember how or why, but I was in a Michael's. You guys have Michael's in the street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
We call them rockets.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're Smarties. They're not rockets. Well, one day they had black polyfiber, and I'm like buying, and it was like, I don't know, it was like $3 a bag, and I'm walking out of there,
game changer.
Yeah, like the guy with the toilet paper people these days. And I'm walking out there with truckload fulls of, and so I would spread that out on a hillside, and I would just do hydrocal. My hills were paper towel dipped in hydrocal, and
wow, okay.
And my hills as I got along, my hills got even less and less like you wouldn't want to lean on them.
Right.
Because the paper towel was strictly just to support polyfiber, which turns out weighs nothing.
Right.
And then I would spray glue on there. Aerosol. I think it was 3M that I found was the best one.
Yep.
And I would spray this spray-on glue, and then I would blow on Woodland Scenics ground foam. And I mean, I was getting to the point where I could do 2 and 3 feet in a couple of hours.
Wow.
And pretty quickly, it starts to look like something.
Right.
So that was my trees, and then my rock molds were always from some thing I saw a million years ago in Model Railroad, and they were just take tin foil and crumple it up, and then make it into turn up the sides and pour some stuff in there, hydrocal in there, and slap that on the side. And I got to a point where I would paint that, a couple of colors, and then I started using dried powders.
Right.
What's that company? The one I like the best.
Pan Pastel?
No, the other guy.
Bragdon.
Yeah, Bragdon. And I would just start highlighting with Bragdon. And man, I got to a point where, and you do that. You got the rocks and the trees. You got that much, and that's the basic of your scenery. And man, and my layout at its longest, the longest wall on my layout was 20 feet. Okay. And I had it was the scenery. It was scenery. It was basic scenery, and man, you could just fly along with that.
Yeah.
So that's and then you start to realize, wow, like the basic scenery, your basic scenery is really, really easy.
Yeah, and I'm discovering that as well, and that's really helping get over the initial hurdle, off a dead center to even start, just to get down a base coat of fine ground foam. I mean, it looks a billion times better than nothing, right? So at least doing that, and then, once you've kind of, crossed that Rubicon, you can start going at it, over and over again with the static grass and additional details and stuff like that. I think my problem is really twofold, and one, and it's both related to overthinking this stuff. One is because I'm trying to capture the look and feel of a specific prototype. So I really find it frustrating that my reach exceeds my grasp as far as, I know in my eye what I want it to look like, and I just haven't developed the skill yet to get there. And that can sometimes be a bit frustrating. And the other thing is, having to relearn the lesson over and over again, that so much of this, pretty much with a lot of things in the hobby, but especially with scenery, I'm discovering, is that you can't possibly expect to do it in one pass. It's not as if you got a magic wand and you're just going to go through and in one pass have everything from the ground cover to the grass texture to bushes and trees and everything. You got to keep going over it and over it and over it at different, and each time you go over it, you add another layer of texture, you add another, different colors and stuff like that. And so, it's one of those things I keep having to remind myself of, especially when you get into a large area, and it can be a little overwhelming because you think, oh my God, I got, you're thinking, you got that bark view, almost literally, when you're thinking about all the details that you want to have in a certain area. No, just, do the ground foam and move on, and see how it looks. And I got to tell you, when you called me up, pulling off the blue masking tape, it's like, dang, this is even just with basic ground foam, I use like 4 different colors, and kind of, sprinkling it on there like some sort of mad chef, throwing ingredients in a pot. And, after it dries, it's like, wow, okay, it certainly looks better than foam, certainly looks better than bare plywood, and actually it's a couple steps above that. So, the next step.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm looking at that picture now that you posted just a couple of days ago with the blue in that area. And I mean, okay, there's tons left to do, but that looks a ton better than, like you say, plywood or just plain foam.
Oh yeah, it really does. And one of the things that I'm trying to dial in is just keep going with that. Now I'm not going to go around the entire layout and do that because I really want to get Weathersfield kind of to a level of doneness like I have East Berlin over in the corner. So I'm going to have to get around to doing the photo backdrop and all that stuff as well. But I'm doing a decent job of taking some notes, and I'm certainly documenting it on my Facebook group and on the blog, trying to come up with, almost like the Dave Frary approach, coming up with these recipes. Okay, this is what I found from experimentation that works for me, and writing this stuff down, because by the time I get around the peninsula over to Dividend, it's going to be like, oh my God, I've never done this before, So being able to look back at my notes and pictures, hopefully that'll help. At least that's the plan.
Well, I think one of the best things you said one time when we were talking is, I think it was you, me, and Kaylee were talking about something, maybe a NERPM report or something, which has been canceled now, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I heard that yesterday.
Yeah, so it's and that's the year you were going.
I know. Now it's going to be 4 years between NERPMs for me, and I'm really kind of because it's 2. Then I'm on, and it's every other year, right? So.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, it would have been 2, this coming year. And now, since we got to skip this year, it's going to be a total of 4. I mean, but the cool thing about that is maybe Dave Owens will let me do some of my previous clinics. Nobody will remember them. I mean, he's like, who's this new guy?
Yeah, and me and Kaylee are interviewing Chris Owens tomorrow night.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah, and that'll be out on the first Monday in May.
Yeah, I feel really bad for Dave because that had to have been a tough decision to make, but it's the right one under the circumstances.
So for everybody that doesn't know, you work in Hartford state legislature, and you're a lawyer that works with the Republican Party. And so have they sent you home as well?
They did, actually. We had a positive case that popped up, got reported last week. But we had been a little bit, I don't want to say too far ahead of the curve. I think we were just in time. We were in session. We were scheduled to go in session on the 11th at 4 p.m. to do a bond package that's been long since overdue. And, going into the end of the previous week, we started hearing rumblings that things were going to maybe be moved up a little bit and accelerate a little bit. And it turned out that we went in the morning of the 11th. And once we did our business, they were just like, okay, everybody leave. We're going to disinfect the buildings, the legislative office building, the Capitol. We're going to send everybody home. You're going to work from home for Thursday and Friday. We're going to do a full, sealing the floor, clean, disinfect and everything. And everybody will be back to work on Monday. Well, we had one of the big bills that we've had this session is a bill on vaccinations, as it turns out. believe it or not, earlier in the session, and so it drew a lot of people. There's a lot of controversy around it, whether or not you can force vaccinations on school children or not, or require them in order to be able to attend public school. And there were the pro-vaxxers and the anti-vaxxers, hundreds of people, and that was only a couple weeks previous. So there was a lot of angst and concern about, okay, well, these are public buildings, and so we want to make sure that everybody's safe, and so clean everything up and see how things go. Well, by the time we got into the weekend, the 2-day hiatus had turned into a 2-week hiatus. And as it turns out, as of today, just this afternoon, or this evening, we found out that the 2-week hiatus is now going to be a 4-week hiatus. We're not due back until April 13th. So we're all trying to do all of our work from home, and thankfully, we've got the technology to do that. But you can just imagine with the legislature, I mean, it's a lot of handshaking, it's a lot of backslapping, it's a lot of face-to-face contact, right? So you can only do so much of your job without actually being with people. I mean, for an introvert like myself, it's like, oh, this is perfect. I've been, self-quarantining all my life. The social distancing is natural. But for most of these people, they're just like, texting around. He's like, what's everybody up to? This and that. It's like, leave me alone. I'm telecommuting. let me do my job. They're just like, they want to chat and this and that and everything. It's like, well, it's just a whole different dynamic. And, without going down the rabbit hole, it'll be really interesting over the coming weeks and months to see how legislatures work. I mean, because, if you have social distancing, and if this is going to be the sort of thing where there's going to be, like whack-a-mole, you get it eradicated in one area and then it, mutates and pops up somewhere else. I mean, I have no idea. I'm not a scientist, but, you read some of the articles that say that that's possible, and you wonder, okay, well, what's social distancing mean for a legislature? You got 151 legislators in the House alone, in the House of Representatives, and, they're all in desks sitting next to each other, cheek by jowl. And what are you going to have? Everybody, I saw a meme on Facebook. There's this guy that's taken the social distancing and the 6 feet really seriously. And he's got he's in the middle of this giant disc that's held up by suspenders. And he's walking around with this giant disc around him. So everybody's got to keep their distance. We're going to require all the legislators to do that. I think that might not be a bad idea, but it'd be entertaining if nothing else. But,
kind of like a clown suit. Yeah,
giant clown suit, or the other one with the the dog giving the cone to the master.
Yeah.
So yeah, who knows what that's going to be like going forward? But yeah, that was a very long answer. Yeah, I work in Hartford.
For a guy that's an introvert, it's kind of like, okay, take a breath, buddy.
Well, I've got Dave Everly's I got to worry about now. If I want to compete for somebody that's got a lot to say, boy.
Talk about an annoying guy, eh?
He was a lot of fun to listen to.
Oh, he's awesome.
Say.
You know what?
High energy.
You know what? And I think I actually said it on one of the podcasts when I was talking to him. I think I said to him, and I am pretty sure I said this. I feel confident that I did, actually. Something to this effect. I'm paraphrasing myself. But I said to him, the great thing about Chris Adams, I said, I hate timetable and train orders. I said, I don't want to do model paperwork. But I said, you're like Chris Adams. I said, he's a timetable and train order guy, loves modeling that part of the thing. But I said, I have no doubt that I could go to Chris's house, partake in an operating session, and Chris would just be happy that I'm there and having fun.
Absolutely.
And that's a great quality to have. Is you have that same quality. You and Dave both have that same quality of you like to talk, you like to interact with people, but I always feel like you're just as interested in what I have to say as what you want to say, and which makes it great. So you need to know that about yourself. Well,
thank you. I appreciate that. It was quite a, I don't want to say a test, but it was interesting whenever we had the big operating session around Springfield when Christina Zambri and Rod Deary, I may have told you this before, but they were first-time operators. I had no idea. I had no idea that they had never operated before, and I actually put them on the same train together, the two of them. And but I was you're right. I do throughout the session, and I want to make sure that there aren't any problems or anything, but I'm constantly going around, hopefully not to the point of being annoying, but asking folks, you having a good time, is there anything you need or whatnot? And they told me afterwards that they had a really good time. And only after that did they tell me that they were first-time operators. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, there must be something going right with the layout and with the way it's set up and everything. Because if, somebody can come in just about off the street, pick up a throttle, get their instructions and go and enjoy themselves, then, what else is there really? I mean, you really want there to, you want to have people have a good time and enjoy the layout. Obviously, you want to try and do it realistically, but, at the end of the day, it's just getting together and enjoying simulating railroad operations. And, if you don't get into all the intricacies of timetable, train order, that's okay. Because if you're enjoying yourself and you're getting a sense and a feel for what it was all about, mission accomplished.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have no doubt. What's that Rod Deary guy like? Was he nothing but trouble?
Well, he's a road grader, he gets great. He's grading.
yeah, exactly.
No, he was awesome. I mean, it was so cool to have, people from all over. It was pretty wild. I mean, I didn't realize where he was from at first. And I mean, obviously I could pick up on the accent, but I didn't realize that he'd literally come from there, from Australia. And, but yeah, just, really nice guy. I mean, and that's one of the coolest things about the hobby. I mean, you run across an occasional jerk every once in a while because they're human beings,
right.
That's what's going to happen. But for the most part, the folks in this hobby are just, amazing, amazing folks. I mean, politics gets in every once in a while, but you almost get the sense that it's kind of like the skunk at the garden party. Somebody brings up politics and it's like, okay, everybody kind of, walks away, he turns their backs. and that's real, for somebody that works in that, that's really refreshing to be able to turn all that off and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, I feel like the AML, it's like nobody wants to ruin it by bringing up that kind of stuff. And you see it in the fans page. It's like everybody is more interested in being friends than they are in having their point of view put across.
Exactly. And something, and again, don't want to go down this rabbit hole necessarily, but just to mention in passing that, and I think I've mentioned it before, that is one of the coolest things about any hobby or anything that you're really passionate about. But, I'm familiar with model railroading, so just use that as an example. The folks, I mean, if they're actually talking to each other, that is, that goes so far in helping you understand another person's point of view, where they're coming from. I mean, you've often mentioned how diverse the backgrounds are of people that are in the hobby. I mean, you could be, just chit-chatting, at an operating session with somebody that's a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but you never know it because he can't really operate his throttle very well. So you're trying to give him pointers on throttle control or something. It's just one of those things that there's such a wide diversity and such, so many different points of view that when you get together and you can actually realize, okay, well, I may be a Republican, but hopefully I'm not a jerk. And you figure, okay, well, so maybe they're not all idiots. Maybe they're not all jerks. So you think, okay, well, maybe somebody else has a point of view different than mine, but I know that person. I've gotten to know that person through the hobby or whatever, and that will cause me to listen to them, and maybe we do talk about some things other than model railroading, and I've had some great conversations, and that's one of the things that I think is really lacking right now. People aren't having these conversations. They don't get to know each other. There's fewer and fewer opportunities to do that. And ironically, through the internet and social media, big irony, through the AML, we've actually got a community of folks that can do that. And, that's just really, really very cool.
I'm going to tell a story that would be, this is kind of like, for me, this is almost like confession.
Uh-oh.
Well, the podcast is like confession because I always feel like I want to tell the truth so that when people meet me, that I am the way I am when they hear me, because so many people like the podcast so much. I don't want to be any different when they meet me, because I'm like, I can't remember anything. I can't remember yesterday. But that's a superpower that I have. I discovered in my 40s that I have this superpower where if I don't want to remember it, boom, it's gone. I don't know. I could have met you an hour ago. If I don't.
Well, that way every day's a brand new day.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, with all this COVID-19 and all the stress and strain that everybody's under right now, The other night I was talking after a podcast. I can be very opinionated, but I try not to be that way on the podcast because it's not about me. It's about everybody else and everybody enjoying themselves. So I can't, and I think because I've been self-employed pretty much my entire adult life and been able to make my own decisions and all that stuff, I can be, when I decide a certain thing's got to be a certain way. So we were talking, it was me and Tom Jacobs and Bruce Wilson and I think Bruce, or the modeler simply known as Kelly.
Oh, right.
And we got talking about COVID-19 and I'm like starting to tell my opinions and I'm getting more and more amped up. And afterwards, and I can see them look. And then when I finally stop to take a breath, they're like, "There's nothing. There's no noise. There's nothing." And I'm thinking, yeah, I think my opinions are kind of out there, and I should. I gotta. And these poor guys are just like sitting there getting pounded to death by me because I'm not going to do it on the podcast. And I thought, but you know what? The point I'm trying to get to is their friendship. I realized over the last couple of days that their friendship is far more important to me than my opinions.
And that is the key. When you have the relationships, the relationship and the friendship transcends this other stuff. And then you can actually have the adult conversations and maybe your attitude or your opinion gets modified a little bit. Maybe theirs does, but you don't get to that point unless you have the conversations, and you don't have the conversations if you don't have the trust and the friendship.
Yeah.
And so, and that's something that is super important. And it's something that I think has really been developed a lot through the AML.
Yeah. Well, you and I are a perfect example. I don't see how any way that you and I would have ever been friends socially without model railroading. Not because either one of us is a snob or not because either one of us thinks we're better than the other person, but you're a lawyer and a constitutional lawyer in the state legislature. I'm a scruffy guy, and pickup truck driving scruffy guy, and like the two of us just wouldn't cross paths more than likely. For no other reason other than we have two different lives, and yet because of this hobby, it brings us to, I would say you and I are very good friends.
I would say so too. I mean, although I did grow up in Louisville, Kentucky and West Virginia, and I did drive a pickup truck before I got the Mustang, just so you know.
Perfect.
So maybe not that far off, but
Yeah.
but I get your point. I mean, and that's absolutely, it's one of those things where, like I've said before, the friendships that you develop through this kind of common thread. I mean, it's the thing that is the mortar, I guess, that keeps us together. But we're all different bricks, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're all very different in our ways, but having this kind of common thread that we can center around a little bit, we can be authentic with one another. And that's one of the things that I think is really very cool. That like you were saying before, the podcast, you're not going to be anything else, because if you meet somebody in person, just like, okay, who's this guy?
Yeah.
Somebody totally different. But no, I mean, it's a very cool hobby in that way. I mean, not to beat it to death, but it is something that I think is so needed right now, that such a big part of so many of the problems that we've got. I mean, just as in politics, I think in society, is that we're too quick to retreat behind social media and not have actual adult conversations with each other, because we're not building the relationships. And that's why I was saying before, the irony of the podcast is that, to a greater or lesser extent, other than the occasional show or whatnot, we haven't met each other in person, a lot of us, but yet we're all friends through the network and through the podcast. And like you say, I mean, no first date jitters. If you do see somebody in person, you already know them, because you've already been authentic and you've already had some conversations, or them, from listening to them on the podcast, or you've actually, through Facebook connected, and now, you're commenting on each other's layouts, and maybe that evolves into, okay, now you're not just, connecting through the fans page, but, you're actually, friends on Facebook as well. And so maybe you pick up a phone, maybe you, throw an email or something, and now you've got a relationship, you've got a friendship.
That's what I think is the most exciting thing is when people start telling me that they're talking to other people and I'm not anywhere near the conversation and they just struck up a friendship. And I think to myself, man, that is what a cool thing to have done with my life. What a cool
Oh,
thing.
absolutely. And best and the first example that comes to mind for me for that is Seth Gardner, right? I mean, so I'm on my way down south, and I just kind of mentioned that I'm visiting family. I'm going to be in North Carolina area. Is there anybody up there? And you immediately, like, I'm sitting in the Panera somewhere in Morgantown, West Virginia, and all of a sudden I get a text from you and say, oh, Seth Gardner, he's always, willing, and up for having somebody visit the layout. And Seth and I have been going back and forth ever since. I mean, he's given me some excellent scenery advice and weighed in on a bunch of stuff, and I feel like I can do that with him as well. But for the podcast, that never would have happened. Not in a million years.
And how cool is that? I'm not. Be honest. Like when you guys are talking, like, did you mention me 3 or 4 times per conversation, half a dozen times?
I don't think we ever stopped talking about you.
I'm scrolling through your Facebook page, and I like this picture here. You got all kinds of. You got to be happy with the progress of your layout now, eh?
I am. I'm not at all happy with the speed of the progress, but what is there, I'm really happy with, and that's good. So there's slow but sure, I guess, is the watchwords, but yeah, it's coming along. I got to say the telecommuting. I think it was Tom that mentioned having all this commuting time now because he's telecommuting as well. So since he's not actually driving in the car, he's got this extra time for the hobby, and I've got a little bit of that as well. But boy, not as much as I thought I might have. And but yeah, the progress is coming along, and I hope. And I don't want to go so far as to say as I expect, but I certainly hope that as I'm doing the scenery more and more and kind of grooving some techniques and developing the skills, it'll just keep going faster and faster. And that's really what I hope happens. I mean, it happens in other areas of life. You start out and you're really slow at it. You're very deliberate. You're doing it for the first time. And then, well, it's like learning how to drive stick, right? I mean, you're actually thinking about, okay, I'm going from first to second. Now I've got to put the clutch in, go from second to third. And then eventually you're not, you're carrying on a conversation, watching the road and shifting all at the same time. You're not even thinking about it. Same sort of thing. So I'm hoping that I can accelerate my scenery a little bit as it goes on. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it's come out. But I've had a ton of help and an influx of a ton of structures, which has really given things a huge boost. I unfortunately lost one of my biggest collaborators and contributors to the layout this at the beginning of this month. But he's got there's a legacy on the layout. He's got a bunch of buildings in Weathersfield and in Dividend that he built for me, and that's part of the layout too. Is kind of paying homage and keeping legacies and memories alive of all the people that have helped me along the way.
Yeah, I got a couple questions here for you. See, look at that. We've killed 34 minutes already, and we're making we're making somebody happy.
I hope so.
We are. And I got this really cool new software that makes it a lot easier for me now too. So long as everybody behaves, I don't have to do as much editing as I used to, which is really cool.
Cool.
So I'm looking at this road crossing from March 13th. And it says morning progress, although it was posted at 3:50 p.m., so I'm not sure how that's morning progress.
I told you I work slow, right?
And so he's working on a timber grade crossing at Wells Road where the siding to the Valley Coal Company branch is off. Yes, those are individual pieces of wood, so you built the crossing piece by stick.
Yep.
And then where'd you get this idea to stick in the there are 3 individual pieces of lumber sticking straight up.
Right.
Where'd you get that idea?
It was necessity. Was it necessity born of invention, or however that phrase goes? I noticed that even though I had glued the pieces down, there was this one piece that I don't know if as it dried it warped a little bit or what happened, but it was kind of bending into the flange way. So it was just one of those deals where it's like, okay, well, I want to make sure that the flange ways stay, as wide as they're supposed to. So I got out a couple pieces of wood and just kind of jammed them in there while everything was drying.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, thanks. I didn't think of much of it at the time. I just didn't want to have to go in there with a file later.
I ended up trimming mine out with an X-Acto knife and a number 11 blade when I ended up doing it, because I think it looks so cool when you do it as individual pieces of wood.
It does, and it's extra effort. I did another crossing. I did a series of posts where I tried 3 different types of approaches to doing grade crossings, and one of the ones that I did was was using the Blair line. I think was the manufacturer. They've got pre-done crossings. They've got all the detail cast into them. You basically just plop them down and you're good to go, and they look good. But you always know when it's done individually, and there's just something about the way the stain colors, the way if you're using your India ink and alcohol wash, the different pieces of wood will each have a little bit of a slightly different grain and will absorb the stain differently. So it actually really does look like individual pieces of wood, and it's more effort. But I got to tell you, I mean, I don't get all, kind of woo about this sort of thing, but it is kind of Zen-like, or what I imagine that must be like, because it's really just very relaxing, and it's very immersive. You're there, I'm listening to the podcast, or I'm listening to some music, and I'm just there, and I'm, it's not anything you got to think about once you've planned out what you're doing. It's just the doing. And so you can turn your brain off, you can just enjoy doing it. And you just turn everything else out. And it's really relaxing. When you're done, you've given your brain a break. You've you've kept the world outside for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you've got a grade crossing, unless you use too much alcohol wash and you end up warping the boards and they pop off, and that's a whole other story. But then it gets kind of frustrating. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm finding out about myself through doing this, is that I really enjoy getting into the minute detail. And I'm thinking to myself, as I'm going along and seeing, I am seeing progress. But one of the frustrations is that, if I had discovered about myself years ago that I was really into doing the details and focusing in on, all the minutia, I don't think I ever would have built as big a layout as I did.
Right.
Because I know that about myself, it's even easier to get overwhelmed when you come down to the basement and think, oh my God, how many nut bolt washer castings can I do over this entire layout? And it gets a little crazy. But then the flip side is, and kind of, circling back to what we were saying before, is that without this size layout, I could, how could I keep, 8, 10, 11 people, busy and engaged and having that camaraderie with, a layout that only had 2 turnouts? I mean, that might be immersive for me as a lone operator, but have a bunch of people come down, which I've also discovered I really enjoy, but it's like anything else, it's a balance. So it helps that I have a lot of people helping.
And when you say that, you said that a couple of times. So you say you have a lot of people helping. In what way?
Well, I mean, especially early on with the kind of the grunt work. I mean, some of the soldering of feeders, certainly the structures. I mean, that's been huge. Bill Schneider has built a bunch of structures for the layout. Oh golly, his name just went right out. I want to say McGill. I can't believe I just forgot his name. But there was a fellow, Bill McGee. I should look it up. I'm so lousy for being in politics. I'm so lousy with names. It really kind of sucks. But the Bill McGuire. There we go.
Bill McGuire. There you go.
Yeah. So
hang on a minute. Bill, I want to personally apologize to you. I understand you put a lot of work into Chris's layout, and he didn't forget you. He's just talking so much, it just got lost in the blender there. But it came out. It was less than a minute, I think. So you're good to go.
It really was, and I was just so excited about his structures, and everything else blanked. But he was retiring from the hobby, and I got a bunch of structures from him. I mean, they really anchor, or actually are just about every building in East Berlin, except for the station, which was built by my friend Dave Messer, who's the fellow that passed away earlier this month, who grew up in Wethersfield, Connecticut. So he had built just about everything in Wethersfield, from memory and from photographs that I would send him in measurements. So I've had a lot of help with the structures. Randy Hamill, who you talked to on the podcast a few weeks back, he helped a lot with the track work early on. He continues to be a big help with regard to the scenery and tips and stuff like that, because he's done he's further along than me in a lot of that. Dick Otto, Tom Derwin, Peter Roos, Pete Lucchini. I mean, a bunch of guys that I've tried my best to keep mentioning them on the blog, because I'm just so appreciative that they want to they've kind of caught the bug a little bit with the project, and kind of like what Tom Jacobs has with James Mattern and his crew. You're lucky enough to get these guys that maybe they have a layout themselves, maybe they don't, but for whatever reason, they get the bit in their teeth as well. And it's really cool to have somebody else, kind of get it and then help you along the way. I mean, it certainly helps when you got a layout of any size to be able to have that sort of input and, another pair of eyes to look at things and, somebody to bounce things off of. So, I'm incredibly grateful for all that.
I'm afraid to ask you any more questions. You're great. We got to do this more often, whether there's a virus going around or not.
Oh.
We got to do this more often. You and I just got to have a chit chat. So I want to talk about this. Now I got 3 questions. I'm going to try to, first off, I'm going to go with this question first, because I'm excited to tell you about this and ask you. So I interviewed Jason Schron about 3 weeks ago. I went right to Rapido Trains.
Nice.
And you know what he's like. So I was shocked that.
He's a real wallflower.
Yeah, he's a wallflower, and also he's hard to nail down. Like I was shocked that I actually got a day there, and we talked in his office for like an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, nice.
And I used my portable thingamajigger recorder. See, I forgot that. I used my portable recorder and my two good microphones, and with this new software I found, I started listening to it on the drive home from Florida, and like, oh my God, it was like, honest to God, I've said this to a couple of people. It was like the sound was so good, it was like I was having an orgasm.
I don't know that I would think of that, but okay.
I can't think of any other way. I was so excited after 5.5 years of doing this podcast, and I've been excited about the quality of the sound, how it's improved over the last 2 months. And I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, because I listen to a lot of like NBC News and Dateline podcasts.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the sound is always so good, and I'm thinking, well, my sound is good, but it's not that good. It's Bill.
Yeah, it's not $100,000 worth of good.
Yeah. I'm thinking, how do I get there? And I'm listening to this interview with Jason, and I'm like, oh my God, this sound is unbelievable.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So, but that's not why I'm here. That's not why I had this meeting. The question I want to ask is, obviously now I have to interview Bill Schneider.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so he was like one of the original employees of Rapido Trains.
I don't know if he was. I know that he was very early on.
Early on. He's one of the first 4.
I think one other. Yeah, I think he and Jason and one other guy maybe at the time.
And so, what does he do? He designs, or what is exactly like? How did you get to meet? Were you already friends with Bill before he started working at Rapido?
No, actually, I think I'm not quite sure when he started working for Rapido, but I'm almost certain that it had to be before I met him. I knew that he had worked at Branchland. I think he may have worked at Branchland right before going to Rapido. But I'd known about Bill by reputation from his O&W layout, and seen it in the magazines, and was a kind of a fanboy, I guess you'd say, because he did for the O&W what I'd always wanted to do for the Valley, and that is to kind of have this amalgam of reminiscences of folks that worked on the railroad and that lived in the area, and just kind of absorbing the sense of place and really being able to capture that and then convey it in model form. I mean, that takes an incredible amount of talent, but certainly grunt work of research and design and getting all this stuff together so that everything works together toward that end, toward that goal that you want. And so I'd always admired that. And I forget who, and somebody, if they're listening to this, will remind me who it was. But I don't know if it was Randy or if it was Ted Collada or somebody was a mutual friend. So they knew Bill, and I knew them. So I got invited to one of his op sessions and for his O&W layout. And so that's how we met. I went over to an op session, and I think I was there maybe 10, 15 minutes before I knocked over his water tower onto the floor. So I thought, I'm never being invited back. And he was, and I could have sunk right into the floor with the water tower. I mean, I was just like so embarrassed. And, I doubt that you've ever been there, but if you know anything about his O&W layout, the joke is you don't really go visit the O&W or, go to the O&W as much as you put it on.
Oh, wow.
Because it's so small. It was in such a small room, and it was like triple decked, I think. And you walk in, and he's got this railroad shoehorned into this back bedroom. And so there isn't, the point is that there isn't a lot of aisle space. And, I've got a pretty good sense of my size and thought that I was being careful, but, there was a rogue elbow or a shoulder or something that caught that water tower and sent it to the floor. And Bill, I'll never forget, was incredibly gracious. He said something along the lines of, "Oh, I really enjoyed building that. Now I'll have a chance to build it again."
Jeez. And you're thinking you just want to hide. You just want. You're feeling like crap. And
it was perfect. I mean, he was laughing about it and everything. And if you know anything about Bill and structure building, I mean, it's one of the things that he loves, and he is so good at it and so fast. I mean, he did a freight house, the freight house in Old Saybrook, in my old Saybrook scene, and so fast that I think it was, I had just mentioned it to him, a few days previous, and this was after he had dismantled his O&W for a house remodeling project, and so I guess I hope maybe he was bored or for whatever reason, but he wanted to, he was into building structures, and I had mentioned something to him, and a few days later he shows up, we're going to do some scenery together, and 10 minutes goes by, 20 minutes goes by, half an hour goes by, or whatever, and he's like, you haven't noticed it yet, have you? And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, look on the house track. I looked back there. He had placed a model of the old Saybrook freight house there on the layout. I had totally missed it.
Wow.
But he had built it in like 2 days, and it's perfect. And so yeah, he's really very quick. I mean, he had the water tower redone in no time that I had demolished. But yeah, he and I had met at that point. He got really into what I was doing with my project, and the timing worked out such that he didn't have his O&W layout anymore. So, I was able to leverage that to my advantage. And with his gracious donation of time, he, came down and did a lot of the initial scenery work on the layout in Rocky Hill, built those buildings. He did the Shaverville Bridge scene. But yeah, he's been with Rapido, since before then. And I think what he does for them is he does all their design work, a lot of the product design, everything from coming up with ideas right through designing them artwork. I don't know if he actually won a prize, or if he didn't, it was definitely mentioned in the British press, because Rapido does a lot of business with the in Britain,
right,
and a lot of museum quality modeling in Britain. And I think the Sterling Single, I think, was the name of the steam locomotive that Bill designed, and it got all sorts of accolades over there. And he's also into British modeling, Bill is, and so he was in England for a little while. But I won't steal all of his stories. But he's just a really great modeler and just a genuinely good guy. Another one of those guys that you meet in the hobby, and and so incredibly talented, so much skill, and just a regular guy,
Right.
just somebody that you can strike up a conversation with and just be fast friends with.
Is it hard to get him to talk like you?
Oh yeah, he doesn't really say much.
Just like you, right?
Yeah, another introvert.
I got a story to match your water tower story. First time I've ever told this, and it only happened like 4 weeks ago. So my buddy that has a T-shirt company, I met him through my other friend that I got all my T-shirts off of him, and he unfortunately passed away. And then so Steve, I ended up knowing of him, and for the first few times, for a year, he just basically annoyed the crap out of me. And because he's one of these guys, he's just one of these guys that you say, okay, I want so many of this and so many of that, and he just is carrying on all the time. And but as time went along, I started to really warm up to him to the point where it was like I look forward to going over there, and to the point where I would just stop by for the heck of it, right? Mm-hmm. So we became more and more friends and close friends, right? And so finally, and he's always telling me about his other buddy, Matt. Mm-hmm. And him and Matt are always doing this, that, and the next thing. And he says, hey, one night, around 4:30, he says, "Hey, Matt's coming over for a beer. You want to have a beer with us?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I'm thinking, okay, great. I'm making the next step in on our friendship. This is great. I'm going to meet Matt. Matt comes over. Steve gets out beer for everybody. We're maybe 5 minutes into talking, and I turn and I knock my beer, boom, right across Steve's desk.
Oh, no. Well, that was awkward.
Yeah. And Steve's looking at me like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, and we both grabbed to pick it up. And when you're both grabbing to pick it up, you're making the situation worse. And it looked like
everybody's getting sprayed.
Yeah, it looked like Lucy and Ethel. The harder we tried, the worse it got. And I was like, God. Oh my goodness. But as I'm telling you this story, so the next day, he was very gracious, and he was like, "Don't worry about it, forget about it, blah, blah, blah." And we had a great laugh about the damage I did. And so the next day I went over to Costco and I bought and he was down to his last roll of paper towels. So I went to Costco and bought one of the big 12 packs of Bounty.
Nice.
And I took it to him and I said, "This is for the next time I come visit." And he says, "Oh, you don't have to do that." But now as I'm telling you this story, I realize I realize there's a place where I can go get some paper towel.
Well, there you go, just in case you run out of toilet paper.
Well, the great paper. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to tell because it wasn't that long ago, my son started talking about having kids, so all of a sudden grandchildren are becoming a possibility. And I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to tell my grandchildren that a guy eating bat soup in Wuhan, China led to the great toilet paper shortage of 2020.
One of life's great mysteries.
Yeah. My last question, because we've almost killed an hour here.
Wow.
You've managed to entertain people for an hour. I can tell Michael Shea and George Clark are going to. George, you're going to love this. George, wherever you are, take a picture right now, buddy. So yeah, we've killed an hour, and this is just hug it out.
Just hanging out.
Yeah, we'll call this one just hanging out.
There you go.
Yeah. And my last one, this with the ideal. It looks like ideal. Something or other, some sort of a structure, and there's a station wagon in it, and the road leads off into the background.
Oh, yeah.
And so is this all your handiwork?
It is, actually. I'm proud to say that is that's my scenery. I haven't been able to say that on this layout for a long time, but yep. Because of scenery before, I said, Bill Schneider and some other fellas did that, but yeah, that corner where you see I think it's the Ideal Shoe Company and that's East Berlin. So yeah, that's all me.
So go to Chris Adams' Facebook page, The Valley Local. He charged me $50 to join, but I don't think he charges anybody else. And it's called.
I figured you were good for it.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're going to find out, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess so.
The Valley Local, modeling the New Haven Railroad, autumn 1948. Why does everybody have Facebook pages that are so friggin' long titles? Did you notice it's a modeler's life? Boom, that's it. So anyways, go there, and March 13th is the picture I'm talking about. And I'm telling you right now, don't even think twice about your scenery. Your skills are excellent. Just enjoy doing scenery because your skills are excellent.
Well, thank you. It's
beautiful.
Yeah, that's a neat scene there.
That's a beautiful.
Got a little lucky. The missus Debbie helped me with the color match because I'm a bit colorblind. So I'm trying to figure out how to get the colors off the road that's on the backdrop and matching them to the road that's in the front. That's really the key to get that blending so that it looks like it's all connected. So she helped me out with that. But yeah, that's just foam core board and some chalks, actually Bragdon's, like you like. And yeah, so that corner's come out pretty nice. There's still some stuff I want to do there. I mean, there's a lot of detailing that I'd like to get to. And that's really where it dawned on me that I'm really into, the detailing and really that up close view, because I posted a video about that showed me switching that corner. It's just one turnout, and the scene comes, across the bridge in front of the station, and then there's a grade crossing, and you got to turn out. So there's two sidings, and another immersive process. You just, you come in, you switch out the two industries, and off you go, and you can kill 30, 40 minutes just with one turnout. And so I'm thinking to myself, why do I have a whole basement full of layout if I can get by with one turnout? But yeah, it's pretty cool to have that one area at least at a level of done. That's where I want to get the rest of the layout as soon as I can.
Yeah, as soon as you can, like next week.
Yeah, well, we'll see how long this quarantine goes.
or just enjoy the process and you get done what you get done. Absolutely. That's it, man. Look at that. That's an hour.
Nice.
That's an hour. I think we'll put this. What's today? Today we released, what did we release? I hit the wrong button. So it wasn't until Matt Dawson said, where is it? So today, what did we release? Today,
the Wild West. You were talking about the Wild West of the hobby.
Yeah, that was great with Matt or Adam Pinellas and Chris Brimley.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow is going to be, let me see, I'm going to look on the website right now. And tomorrow will be, let's see, I'm scrolling. I can't believe, that was a question I wanted to ask you. Oh, tomorrow is the All-Star Variety. No, that was the Wild West. Tomorrow is the Prairie Rail 2020 report.
Ooh.
With Chris Atkins and Ron Marsh.
Nice.
And so this will be the day after, which will be, I got my phone now. I'm opening up my phone. That's the other thing I got to me is when I first started this thing, I'd be like just yammering away thinking, oh my God, this is really bad. And it turns out it's not much better than really bad. But okay, so we'll release this on Wednesday morning, March 25th. So look at that. People are getting extra to help them get through this mess.
And that's the thing. I mean, that's what you and I were talking about before we got on the call, is having this content coming out. Everybody's kind of in their basements or in their houses. They're either sheltering in place or they're staying self-quarantine or, try not to go outside too much. And, it's like that meme that goes around, model railroaders have been social distancing forever. So this is nothing new for us.
Yeah.
Same thing with the podcast. This is, none of this has affected our being able to get together through the podcast and listen to it. The only thing that's different is now we can take a lot more content. So thank you.
Yeah, I got to be careful. I don't get carried away doing this, but as long as I just do it for fun and I'll throw a few extras out there because I was very, very touched about how much it meant to a bunch of people that we did that extra one. So I thought, well, maybe that's what I can do to help.
It was really good timing.
Yeah, it was. And Kelly was on there, and it's always a good time with the modeler, simply known as Kelly.
Absolutely.
What was I going to say? I can't remember. All right. So our email address is modelerslife@gmail.com. If you like this, write in and give Chris some shout-outs. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. I had this thought while I was making a cup of tea just 2 minutes before we started this. This was totally spur of the moment. This happened in like 5 minutes. Before, as I was making a cup of tea to have while we had our little chit chat, I always think about how I give you a hard time about, when there's people and they do these press conferences and there's one or two people talking, and there's always people in the background that never say anything. And then I was thinking of Motown. This is the way my brain works. It's actually kind of scary. So then I was thinking of Motown. One of my favorite documentaries was, don't remember the name of it, but it was all about Motown in its earliest days. And you would have the Supremes backing up Smokey Robinson, and you'd have Stevie Wonder playing the piano for somebody else. It was just, and I'm thinking, so is that what they do when they need some guys to say? It'll be like, we need some back people. We need some people standing at the back, and then everybody just runs and jumps in, regardless of whether it's your guy or not.
Yeah, it's pretty much Steph. You need to fill the room.
Yeah.
You know, we're basically the Pips to Gladys Knight.
Yeah. Okay, so we told about our email address, and our website is modelerslife.com. Go on there, and we're going to need I'm going to use that picture. I'm going to go. Let's decide together. I love that. We should probably use that picture we were just talking about with the scenery. That would be perfect for this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there it is. Boom. Done. Settled. Problem solved.
Nice.
And,
well, thank you.
Yeah. And no, thank you.
Let's start doing that.
Yeah. We'll kill another 15 minutes. That's all right. Let's see. Hey, Rod, let's see how much you enjoy that.
There you go.
Okay. So are you ready for the end?
I think I am.
Okay. So remember, a Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
people sheltering in place in their basements with their model railroads.
Mr. Strang's wardrobe provided by The Dashing Camper. For all your fashion and tent repair needs, trust The Dashing Camper.
It's another Lincoln Homer.